Happy New Year! 2019 has begun, but we still have some business to wrap up, namely what I read in the month of December. Most of these books were read for other challenges or reading vlogs, and so I'll link the videos they were in down below if you'd like a more in-depth discussion. As of right now, this is kind of just going through the entirety. So the first thing I read in the month of December was Claus, The Legend of the Fat Man. This was a sci-fi retelling of Santa's origin story. Everything had a sci-fi twist. Everything had a scientific reason behind it. The elves were basically miniature scientists. It was great. I loved it. I will link that one down below. Next up was Her Treasure Hunter X by Zara Keene. This was also a book I read for in December. Fairly short, barely over 100 pages. It was kind of par for the course as far as romances go. And again, I talked about it more in my in December video, so I won't mention it too much here. Next up, I read Gone for You by Jane Frost. This one was a little bit different than most romance novels I've read in that it was wholly from the man's point of view, which is actually pretty different. Most of the time it's either from wholly the woman's point of view or both the man and woman's point of view. They usually don't focus solely on the man, and I actually really liked that. Very heavy emphasis on the music scene in Texas, which I liked. And again, I'll have that in the in December video if you want to know more. Next up, Fearless Leader by Trisha Owens. You probably don't know much about this book, even if you have watched my in December, because I hated this book and I am going to include it in my worst of indie books, i.e. the best and worst of indie books series. So if you'd like to know more, you can watch that. I don't really want to put it in here because it requires trigger warnings. So I'm going to hold off on that one. Next up, the last of my in December books was Tortured Dreams by Hadina James. This one was a little bit of a disappointment. I had higher hopes than I thought. Won't be continuing the series, unfortunately, though I did... Have I added Hadina to... I gotta add all these indie authors to the list. I keep forgetting to do that. If you watch one of my previous videos, you know that one of my goals for 2019 is to get the indie author list to 1,000. That's my big thing. So that was it for in December, and that was also the first book for the Yule Witchathon. I kind of made it count for both, just to save myself. And the first book I read purely for the Yule Witchathon was Zoo by James Patterson and Michael Ledwidge. That was a surprise. I wasn't intending on liking it as much as I did. I discovered in that book that I have a new love for not downer, but bittersweet, imperfect endings. And again, I talk more about that in my Yule wrap-up and my Yule vlogs. After that came Lisa Jackson's Fatal Burn. Slow to begin with, but I did like it. And I actually recently found another Lisa Jackson book in the store that I like. I also love the paperbacks, so they're cheapish. But again, I go over that in the Yule vlogs and the wrap-up more. Feature editing Margaret here. I did also read Until the End of the World by Sarah Lyons Fleming. And I totally forgot to add it in here, but I really liked it. It was a post-apocalypse with a hopeful twist. I don't know that I'll continue the series just because the ending of the first one was fairly succinct and gave a fairly decent ending, but I did truly enjoy it. Now, back to Past Me. Up next, the book that wrecked me, The Silence of Bonaventure Arrow by Rita Lagansky, however you pronounce that, was a very heart-wrenching, bittersweet tale of grieving and moving on from grief and letting go, and knowing that your secrets never fully leave you. I could go on and on about that book. But again, you can look at the readathons for that. And after that book, I decided to take... Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. After that book came The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. I have actually already returned that to the library, so I do not have it with me. But I did fully enjoy it. Again, it had an imperfect ending, and I'm just loving those right now. That was all thanks to Rhiannon from Crescent Moon Reads, who came up with that. Her group book choices so far for Witchathon have been on point. I'm super jazzed to see what happens for the next one, and I will be continuing with Witchathons from this point out. At this point, I think those are really the only readathons I'll probably do, because I'm really, really picky about the books I read, and so readathons can tend to be a little bit much. But you never know. After that, I decided to take it a little bit easy on myself, and I have my own holiday tradition reading-wise. So I read A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This, as you can see, it is itty-bitty. Not even 100 pages, not even 30,000 words. Modern publishing agents wouldn't touch this today. That just boggles my mind. The story, you know it. However, if you have not read the original, I would highly suggest it. The wording and the wordsmithery and the gothic feel, and there are certain scenes in it that I don't believe I've ever seen included. Like, there's an extra scene with the bell that you never see included anywhere else in any other retelling of it. And I like that scene a lot. So definitely love this one. I read it every year because it's always really quick. You can, if you're really inspired, you can read it in a day, although I think it took me 2. And the last book I read was another easy read, just to kind of take me through the holidays, and that was Just Fake It by Haley Pierce. I don't want to say I am trash for these books, but I am very easily tempted by the cheap, free romance ebooks that you can find. And this one was basically, girl has to pretend to be a famous movie producer's wife for never very clearly defined reasons. Like, it'll apparently just make it more popular to have a wife, and they end up falling in love because of course they do. So it was pretty standard, but a nice light read for the end of the year. I'm actually in the middle of reading a book that I'm going to do a full review on, so I'm not going to bring it up here because you'll get a whole video for it. But I'm really excited to go into the month of January. This month has been awesome. So thank you so much for coming along with me. Feel free to like and subscribe. And I hope you had a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.